Thank you, thank you. So I was at Kentucky Downs this past meeting, and like the horse in the last race, I was kind of waiting all day. I thought the horse was going to be like 7 or 8 to 1. Ended up going into the gate at 6 to 1, and left the gate at 9 to 5. So I wasn't a happy camper. I cashed my ticket on the Brad Cox maiden that won the race, but it's like a gut punch, right? You think you're getting 6 to 1. You waited all day for this horse. I think he was 8 to 1 morning line. And then as the gates spring open, as it turned out, I did some research. There were a couple of big CAW bets made at the very, very last second before the gates opened. So it's tough for the everyday horse player. It's a story that I'll remember, just again, as an everyday horse player. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk today with Pat Cummings moderating about how we handle those large bettors and those late odds changes and how they affect the everyday player. So Pat, take it away.
Thanks, Robert, and good morning. First, I want to thank everyone for being here, everyone that's watching on the live feed. I know this is being live streamed now, and thanks also to the panel sponsor, Wager. Without question, one of the hottest and most contentious topics, certainly in the sport, has been the proliferation of algorithmic betting. There have been many names for it over the years. We seem to have settled on computer-assisted wagering. Some say CAWs, but I will respect those that say CAWs as well. Core mass market horse players are hurting. They're upset and indignant that in the most visible wagering pools, odds and probable payouts change wildly after the gates have sprung. But this isn't the first time American racing has been through this. Horse player Jim Quinn called last cycle odds changes, quote, an insidious problem that contributes to the widespread perception of mischief. That was 22 years ago when he was on the NTRA's Wagering Systems Task Force. Back then, the problems were entirely structural, and the CAW play was much, much smaller. Today, the source of incredible frustration for many customers is seemingly caused by other players who are rebated by operators through relationships they enabled, and it is more exposed than ever because mass market play has shrunk substantially. And through it all, bets are still processed through an antiquated tote infrastructure. Few people with official power in this space address these concerns publicly, but hopefully that will not be the case here today. If actions aren't taken, state legislators may be getting involved. The topic was actively discussed in a New York Assembly subcommittee meeting a few weeks ago, and Kentucky's House of Representatives has indicated an interest in getting involved also. Adjusted for inflation, total handle on U.S. thoroughbred racing is down 56% in the last 20 years. The drop in the core mass market handle is probably more pronounced. But betting on racing is not the driver to purses it once was in most jurisdictions, California a notable exception. While there are fewer races, fewer horses, fewer tracks, smaller field sizes, total purses paid per race adjusted for inflation over the same period of time is up about 22%. Among our questions to consider today, where are we now? How did we get here? What about the role of pricing in all of this? Are takeout reductions for the mass market even possible? What is tote's role in all of this? How can tracks win back confidence and participation of core customers? What tools can be deployed to help the mass market? What is the future of CAW play as we know it? And perhaps most importantly, is there a cliff ahead that we are all hurtling towards where after a certain point we can't get this back? Or perhaps worse, are we already in the free fall? We will take questions at the end of this panel. I'm reserving 15 minutes for it, so we'll pull up in about 42 minutes. And the first question's already reserved. We'll be hearing from Andy Asaro, a horse player and horse player advocate, with his first question at that time. I will be terse. I've already told our panelists to be as straightforward as possible, not to drag on. to get to the answers as much as they can. We do not have a lot of time today. Introducing the panel, David O'Rourke is the President and Chief Executive Officer of NYRA. The New York Racing Association also co-owns United Tote and Elite Turf Club, the CAW processing entity. Scott DeRudy on the far end is President of Elite Turf Club, Monarch Content Management. He's also Senior Vice President of the Los Angeles Turf Club, which operates Santa Anita for First. Dr. Marshall Graham is Professor of Economics at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, major horse owner, breeder, and first and foremost a horse player. In the middle we have Eric Hallstrom, Vice President and General Manager of Racing for Horseshoe Indianapolis. He is also a longtime avid horse player and certainly comes to his role from that perspective. We were scheduled to have Maury Wolf here with us today, a retired professional gambler, which gives you an idea of how successful Maury was while he was doing that. He was a horse player rep on the Wagering Systems Task Force in 2003 and 2004. He tracks this space as close as anyone, and in my professional career, he's one of the sharpest people I've ever encountered. Unfortunately, Maury had a few issues that precluded him from making the trip, and we wish him the best. I did submit some questions. The panel knows this, and Maury has provided some answers, and I will intersperse those as we go along. I want to begin with Scott, just with some questions straight off the bat. Scott, tell us, what is Elite Turf Club? What is your role? What do you do with Elite Turf Club? And how long have you been doing it?
Elite Turf Club is a wagering platform, not unlike TVG or Twin Spires or ExpressBet. Those happen to be retail wagering platforms that have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers. Elite Turf Club is a wagering platform that has a very small number of customers who wager very high volumes. Elite, as many of you know, is owned by First Racing and NYRA, and we're designed to bring these largest players in the world to a place where there's visibility for two racetrack companies to find a balance between bringing their handle into the pools, but also making sure it's done in a way that is good for the racing industry. I understand that last point there's a lot of debate about, but we're open to discussions and always trying to improve things.
So while it is essentially an ADW for a limited number of players, the access is different, right? So your customers, small as they may be, are allowed to bet a heck of a lot more than the average customer can do through their normal ADW. So explain to us the difference between the throughput that your customers have versus the average retail customer.
Well, that's really a matter of contract more than it is a matter of technology, and let me explain what I mean by that. The industry, and this isn't uniform, and as you all know, one of the things about our industry is we have a lot of different interests, a lot of different racetracks, and not one set of rules that apply to everybody. So what I'm about to say is a generalization, but it doesn't apply for every single racetrack. Many tracks in the industry have defined CAW activity as the placement of more than 6 bets per second into a pari-mutuel pool. That definition is important because if I have a player on ExpressBet, and whether you know this or not, ExpressBet has a system called direct file upload. On my regular retail ExpressBet account, I can use the racing data to feed into a program as simple as an Excel spreadsheet or something more complicated that I've developed. I can come out with a file of comma delineated each line as a wager, and I can take that file and just upload it directly to ExpressBet. I don't have to punch in each wager. I don't have to use the interface. I can just upload that file. And by the way, the other retail ADW platforms have that same technology as well. If I do that through ExpressBet and I do that as a retail player, I am limited to 6 wagers per second. If I want to bet, whether it's through ExpressBet or through Elite, if I want to bet at more than 6 bets per second, I am allowed to do that. However, there are a set of rules that go along with that for purposes of, again, trying to control, have visibility. What are those rules? Well, if I'm going to bet more than 6 bets per second and therefore I become a CAW player, I have to have my own TRA code, so every single one of my wagers is traceable and trackable back to me. If I'm going to be a CAW player, I can never cancel a wager, ever, for any reason. Retail players can. So there's a set of rules that apply to the CAW activity. That technology is available at Elite, but it's available at other platforms as well. It just so happens that most of the large players have come to Elite. I believe we provide great service and great technology and great business arrangements, and that's why they've come to Elite, which again I think is a benefit for the industry. NYRA and First, two of the biggest racing companies in the business, have ownership and visibility of this platform, so we can set rules, we can have the transparency and understand what's going on in this space.
And you're not the only one, though. So there's other CAW processing platforms, correct?
Absolutely.
Velocity, correct?
Correct.
And Racing and Gaming Services also does this?
Correct.
Okay, so we understand you're not alone in this space. Let me ask you this. What odds or wagering data is made available to CAW players? And how does it differ in any way, shape, or form from that a retail player experiences, either on their ADW platform, through a simulcast feed? What is the difference? Because there feels like there's a lot of people that think CAW players are getting a lot of different information.
So that's a good question. I'm going to try to respect your request to be succinct in the answers, but this is detailed. So let's use Santa Anita Racetrack as the example. If Santa Anita's running races, there is a data feed pushed out by the AmTote, which is the tote company for Santa Anita. There's one and only one data feed. That data feed has the information about how much has been wagered into each pool. There's certain visibility. For example, in the win pool, you can see exactly not just the total of how much has been wagered in the win pool, but you can see it broken down by how much has been bet on each racing entrant. Same thing in the exacta. You can see the total that's bet in the exacta pool, but you can also see what has been bet individually on each combination. And then there's things like the pick six, where there's just a total. There's no visibility in the tote feed at all. There's no visibility into the breakdown of how those pick six wagers have been allocated. You just see the total amount bet in the pick six pool.
So let me just clarify. If a customer is betting, let's say, a pick four, CAWs do not have an ability to see how other customers are betting in the later legs of those bets?
No, they do not, because that data is not contained in the data feed. And there's one and only one data feed that goes to every wagering location throughout the world. It goes to the CAW players. It goes, if you're a TVG or Twin Spires or ExpressBet account holder, it's that same data feed that goes to your betting platform. If you're at the racetrack, it's the same data feed that is displayed on the tote board in the infield. Now, you said, is there any difference at all? There's no difference in the data that's delivered, but there is a difference in the ability of the consumer to absorb that data. And what do I mean by that? If you're at a racetrack, you're all familiar with this. If you're at a racetrack and you're looking at the tote board in the infield, you're going to see what the tote board operator puts on the board. And there may be a point in time where they're showing the win pool. And in your mind, you're thinking, boy, I would really love to see the exacta will pace. But it's not being shown on the board. You have to wait until it cycles to the exacta will pace, and then you get to see that data. If you're on your Twin Spires account, for example, if you want to see the exacta will pace, you just go to the tab on the odds page and click exacta will pace. So using ADW interface allows you to be now in control of what data you see and when. The final example would be for the CAW players. They're receiving that tote feed digitally, and they're absorbing it in a way. Elite Turf Club doesn't have a graphical user interface, so they're just receiving the data, and they get to do or use it however they want. It's not like there's a tab they click on to see the exacta pays versus the win pool. They're just receiving the data. So that's the whole scenario.
Hammering this home, there is one data feed. There's one information feed of odds, information, and how betting is happening.
Correct.
Okay. Your players. Is there in any way, shape, or form a racetrack operator in this country that also functions as a CAW player?
No, obviously there's a lot of misinformation and rumor out. If you want to spend your time going through the internet, you can find all kinds of rumors about how, First Racing is betting through a lead, or NYRA is betting through it. All that is nonsense. We are a platform like ExpressBet, TVG, or Twin Spires. We have customers, they bet through our platform into the pari-mutuel pools.
And the customers come and go?
Yes.
Okay. Let's pivot. I asked Maury Wolf the question, how sustainable is the current participation of CAWs in U.S. racing pools? Maury's response, besides big days, the only area where racing has been able to grow handle is with the computer groups. How much CAW the business can take is hard to know. Horse racing is at this point a government-enabled corporate welfare project. It exists as it does because it is being subsidized by slots. But government at some point does respond to the environment. You saw some of this in the argument of Florida legislators about decoupling this spring, and you'll probably see it again in 2026. If the business is failing, why should government support a business that can't support itself? For a long time, there's been a social license, a contract that exists, and it's that horse racing was an agribusiness. There were a fair number of jobs, albeit low-skilled and low-paying. Tracks were part of the culture, and people liked betting horses. But as racing becomes top-heavy in every aspect, regular horse players abandon the sport, while it seems racing serves 10 to 15 customers or so really, really well at places like Elite and Velocity. Maury says, I'm left to wonder two things. What happens to that social contract, and how soon? Dave, I want to pivot to you off this. You decided to do something about this 4 years ago. You saw something in the market, and you were the first, and for 4 years, the only track operator to introduce a new policy. You announced that CAWs would not be allowed to bet into the win pool at NYRA after 2 minutes to post. What did you see? What made you make that decision? And what has been the effect of that decision?
So thank you. 4 years ago, we produce a lot of television. So when you have the win odds changing and they're halfway around the track, that's a really bad customer experience. And it's the effect of volatility. So at that point in time, we decided to do something quite draconian, I guess you'd say, is just cut them off. It did solve that, but it's not it was sort of optics in the sense. It solved that for that one. It created a pool where there was less volatility towards the end. The odds were much more stable. So in terms of the visual product at that moment, that worked. We anticipated others would follow pretty quickly. It seemed like a simple fix for a component of really what we're talking about here. But we started to see some momentum earlier this summer on that, and some other tracks have come on board. But you'd have to think of that as phase one, and there's a lot more to work on here. And I think the real core issue here is the volatility of the odds towards the end of these cycles. It creates a very poor experience for the player, the retail player.
So you as a track operator took the step to try and control a portion of your customers to more positively affect them in at least one pool. And I know you've done some research on this because we've discussed this. We've been on some calls together internationally, talking to operators globally about how they're managing their CAW business. What did you learn talking to people from around the world about how they manage these individuals who are betting incredible amounts of money, but leaving a bad taste in the mouth of all the other customers?
Yeah, so this isn't unique to us. In a lot of these other jurisdictions, Hong Kong, Australia, example, they faced this and they addressed it roughly 10 years ago, I would say, is when around 2014. And the focus was the volatility movement of the odds, really when you're getting down to it in the last 2 minutes, the last few cycles. So a lot of these countries have an advantage in the fact that they have one tote system. We have three. So we're trying to merge different technologies, and you can go on into cycle times, but it really gets down to the fact what measures and guardrails can be placed in to improve the customer experience. We're dealing with pari-mutuel. It's a very unique form of gambling where the odds aren't going to end. It's very unique, and as you're getting these throughput changes and compute, it's created an environment where it's chaotic in terms of the volatility towards the end. So you start looking at what guardrails can you put in. Now I can explain where I intend to go at this point. Would you like me to do that? Or?
We'll get there. We'll get there. We've got 29 minutes.
Okay.
So let me pause you there. Let me ask you this one question, because I asked on X for some questions from people that were interested in this panel. And I got this one directed to you. If you had to choose, which would be your strategic priority? Attracting younger bettors to horse racing, just entering the game, or preserving CAW handle at current levels?
That's an easy answer. Attracting new players, 100%. In terms of what we're seeing in the marketplace, the one area of growth is shared wallet on sports books. So there's some green shoots here. But once you get them in, what kind of experience are they having?
So up until now, you would say you haven't done that, but you're looking at doing it more.
In terms of attracting younger, well, we have to look at how we're distributing the product. We were one of the first to have a shared wallet. Getting our content onto I would say like a major sports type platform. These are all initiatives. Now we're just getting to, or we're here to discuss today, the actual gambling product and that experience specifically as you're getting towards the off.
All right, Marshall, you've done a tremendous amount of research on the effect of NYRA's decision 4 years ago and how this looks at every other racetrack in America. And not just the late odds movements, but what those movements do and how they perform. The big movements of CAW players in the last second, the success rate or the failure rate, what the ROIs are on these horses that come plunging down in price versus the ones that go up. What have you seen in your research?
Yeah, I mean, the key is really all of this is a flaw in the pari-mutuel system. The pari-mutuel system is a wonderful system, 160 years old. We've had totalizer machines for over 100 years, and it was never really meant to be played the way it's being played, right? The markets were meant to converge earlier. If you tried to wait until the last minute to bet, you would get shut out. And with the advent of computer technology, you know, there is a race to bet last, right? And for the teams where they incorporate the odds in their models, they often need to. And so the result is people waiting later and later to bet, and the teams betting in the last cycle. So the last cycle movements is what frustrates all of us. I mean, NYRA's changes have been extremely successful based on the data. The favorite changes in a typical race in that last cycle 1 in 5 times. So 1 out of every 5 races, the favorite changes. At NYRA, it's 1 in 25. Del Mar, not to pick on Del Mar, before they made the change, in the 2 weeks before the change, they had 29 major odds droppers, meaning horses that increased their share of the win pool by 50%. In that last cycle, there were 29 of them. 7 of them won, including Nancy Griffith, which went from 18-1 to 6-1. Velocity, which went from 8-1 to 7-2. So 7 of them were winners. Saratoga has had 1 major odds dropper in 2 years. NYRA's only had 14 total. So you compare that to Keeneland, that's had 130, Churchill 378, and Gulfstream 684.
And how do those odds droppers do? What's the ROI? If all you did was bet the big movers who got an increase of share of 50% in the last cycle, how well would you have done as a bettor?
It's negative 2%. And in fact, if you just bet, so it's these big droppers, the ROI is negative 2%. And to go further, if you bet a horse and its odds drop, your ROI is negative 9%. And if its odds drift up, your ROI is negative 37%. So look, the late money is smart. No one doubts that the teams are smart and very good at what they do, right? And in some ways, I don't have any issue with that, right? The pari-mutuel game is a competitive game, and there's evolution, handicapping techniques. New ones come, old ones die. Computer modeling is definitely the way of the future. It's the fact that the pari-mutuel system was never meant to handle these bets at the last minute to shift the odds. We want odds stability, exactly what Dave is talking about, and especially for the growth in gambling that's occurred where people are coming from fixed odds. A lot of people bet now, right? We're in an amazing environment now where there are a lot of people who bet sports, but if they come over and start playing the races and they see the numbers move around, they're just not going to come back. So stability in the win pool, I think, is the large part of the battle. And with what NYRA's done and Del Mar and Santa Anita are doing, I hope other tracks make those steps, because that's a starting point. There are other things, but that's a starting point.
Eric, I want to shift here. You're a horse player first and foremost that got into track management, quite fortunately. A couple years ago, Horseshoe Indianapolis became the first track in North America to display projected odds on your track's feed. You were showing in a partnership with DRF Formulator what the projected final win odds would be, and you show this for probably a good minute to 2 minutes. You show it, I think, twice across the cycle. What was the impetus for doing that, and what's been the feedback you've received?
Well, I appreciate that, Pat. And it hurts my stomach to think that there's retail players that think this game is cooked. It really bothers me from a guy who loves playing horses, but there are vehicles out there that are not being used that can help the retail player. One of them, and it wasn't my idea, it actually came from Steve Bick, who blows up my phone half the time with good ideas. This was one where Steve said, be the first one to do this. And we put out projected odds. We've got a great partner in Daily Racing Form. Their formulator odds are great. They're not perfect, but they're very, very good. I use them myself when I'm playing. I'll be betting Turf Paradise later today using them. I understand what they do and what they provide to customers. And what they'll generally do, it's not always going to be exact to the penny. However, it'll show you a trend of the way this horse is going to go. Now, does everybody know about this? I'm not sure, and I think that's one of the issues we've got. Racing Form Formulator has given us a real vehicle to help retail players, and I know that because I get feedback from customers who are in that retail space saying they like that. Brian Aragoni, Rachel, they use those in their analysis, the projected odds. And as I sit there by myself playing horses or whatever it is, it's a rare occasion where I don't know which way a horse is going to go based on using those formulated projected odds. But I think one of the problems here as we get through this, we'll never have enough time today to solve this, we've just stopped communicating with our customers. And if in our own sense, if we haven't told the world that, hey, play our product, we're going to give you a good idea of what these horses are going to go off at, well, that's my bad. And however, I got this from a horse player, and we do try to connect with our customers at Horseshoe. In fact, we gave away 17 NHC seats this year, didn't ask for one nickel in entry fees. We cater to the retail player. The CAWs are not our growth strategy. The retail customers are. And over time, Dave's business is really mature. Every horse player is betting your product. Scott's as well. There's tens of thousands of people that have never even thought about making a bet on Horseshoe Indianapolis, and that's where our opportunity is, and it's working.
Well, let me ask you, you were up 2% this year, total handle. I'm sick and tired of seeing total handle numbers because I don't think it gives you a real frame of how different customer segments are coming to a particular product. You've got a couple customers that are clearly huge. What was the retail effect? How are you doing in the retail core mass market customers? Or is that growth coming from CAWs?
Well, if I didn't have a good story, I probably would have faked injury today and not shown up here. The good news is our retail play grew this year, and our CAW handle was essentially flat. The Elite Turf Club was up 0.5% on our races this year. FanDuel was up almost 5%. And these are good numbers. We have more brick and mortar locations this year the handle went up on our product, which I'm really proud of, and I think part of that is connection that we're making, constantly trying to get to retail players and getting to know them, having them try to understand our product. Our on-track handle on live racing days went up. It's not happened in a lot of places. And I think we formed a really great team that loves racing, and we'll continue to try to cater to the retail player, and that's how we're going to take market share off of other racetracks until we get to a level. We probably won't be in the NYRA level at some point, but we're inching closer every day to that higher level racetrack, and it's because we are talking to the retail player.
So you've made some adjustments to takeout in the past, and you have some lower takeout exotic bets. I want to sort of pivot here to the pricing discussion. I asked Maury Wolf, what are some things that need to change overall? Maury said, the lack of entrepreneurship in racing is staggering. Horse racing has not introduced a genuinely new bet in God knows how long. A different menu of bets would likely be low takeout, head-to-head wagers. There's a lot of outcomes across a card of races, but the existing takeout structure makes all of these bets untenable. So we're talking about connecting to the public to get them to participate more and to give them a chance where they're not getting crushed by the effect of the CAWs. Now, we'll get into some solutions for the CAW space, but as it relates to the retail space, he says, given that slots are the overwhelming driver of purses in most places, the prospective cost to horsemen of getting creative and as aggressive with pricing as possible is small in exchange for players having better experiences and perhaps sticking around. So Marshall, straight up, what should track operators do about takeout? What is the best and most effective thing to start changing this current status quo?
Well, we have to make it so there's not as large a difference between the retail player and the CAW. So right now, the best and smartest players in the pool who are betting at the last moment are also getting also paying the lowest price. And this is especially true in the super exotics, so that the host fee that most of the tracks are making is flat, and yet super exotics have the highest takeout, and so they're the largest rebates that are offered to the team. So, a starting point would be the lower rebates on tries and supers to at least a little more level the playing field. And that would be great for the teams too, right? Because if casual players bet more and those pools are bigger, that's better for the teams. There are all sorts of source market fees that different states have that make it hard for the takeout rates to come down. Those need to go away. We are priced now worse than we were when we had a monopoly, right? When racing was the only thing that people could bet on outside of Las Vegas, right? Takeouts were much lower than they are now. And so I think that's something that really needs to be looked at. When we introduced, when New York introduced pari-mutuel betting in 1940, takeout rate was 10% and breakage was a nickel, right? So we need to look at how to competitively price in an environment where there are many other games in town.
Scott, you shook your head at something Marshall said. What was it?
I just want to make sure we clarify, and Marshall, I think your comment could potentially be misconstrued. The statement that the CAW players pay the lowest amount, that's not factually accurate. If you think about the platform, it's the platform that is acquiring the content for use by its customers. So Elite Turf Club pays racetracks a host fee to allow Elite's customers to bet on that content, just like TVG and ExpressBet and Twin Spires pay a host fee, just like the casinos and OTBs pay a host fee to the racetrack running the race. So for the quality content in our industry, and I'm talking about the first racetracks and the NYRA track and Keeneland and Del Mar and those, the CAW platforms pay a much higher host fee to the racetracks than the majority of wagering locations around the country. So in reality, from the racetrack's perspective, a dollar of CAW play is actually worth more than a dollar of play from somebody at an OTB or a casino, or oftentimes even on an ADW platform.
Yeah, and that's, okay, that's fair. I mean, what I was really implying is that a betting customer, right, is a CAW betting customer or a professional gambler, right? They're paying a much lower effective takeout than the retail player. So I don't disagree with you. There's no doubt that a dollar in Vegas, right, the tracks are making a lot less than a dollar through a CAW or through NYRA bets or through anything else.
Dave, is there space to trim takeout?
Pricing Pricing flexibility, everyone's correct here. The reality is, if you look at a map and you have source market fees out there, anyone who's a big player or rebate player is going to be aware of that, on where their location is, because that's going to dictate what their rebate is.
So a source market fee is a fee based on where you live that is above and beyond the host fee that is agreed upon.
Yeah, and let me just use an example. You've got let's just use a 16% takeout wager, win bet or something like that. If you're in New York and it's on prime content, like you might have a host fee in the high single digits. Then you've got a source market fee of 6.5%. So you're basically got a fixed overhead overlay there. So how can you come in with a 7 or 5% product? Your distributor's essentially underwater on half the card of bets. So to get to price flexibility, to get to these creative things, we need a uniform source market structure in this country. Otherwise, you're asking a distributor to distribute something that they're literally underwater on a fixed tax structure.
But is there any reasonable explanation as to why a track would have 28% takeout on a superfecta bet?
That's a good question. Like when you look at the menu, does it make sense, the structure, when, like,
Let me ask the
use
question a
of the
little
pick
differently.
five, for instance?
Let me ask it a little differently. Is takeout held artificially high in order to rebate CAWs and keep the mass market down?
No. Takeout essentially blends for the most part to 20% across the board, and most of the financial structure of this industry is basically based on that. So if you're looking at overall handle, when you're distributing it, you're going to make the assumption of it's roughly 20% takeout on that, and then you're going to look at these different tax structures and net, and you're going to look at host fees in the high single digits. So it's a blend. So when you're looking at your menu, the way that we've added bets and then changed and put in low takeout bets but left certain ones high, I think the whole thing needs to be revisited and recascaded, to be honest. And if we were able to have the flexibility with a fixed source market fee structure, because we're essentially distributing to the whole country, that gives you the pricing flexibility to actually bring takeout down on specific bets. If you're charging a host fee, your host fee might not be the same on each of these bets. It'll go up on many of the exotics in many instances. And then if you have a very low product you want to put into the market, right now you can't do that. Everybody will be underwater. Nobody will distribute it.
Scott, short term versus long term. It feels, from my perspective and the vast majority of horse players' perspectives, that the focus seems on just a short-term squeeze of the market to get as much out of it today as you can, because who cares about what's going on in the future? Is it not even in the best interest of the CAWs to have a bit more of a longer-term perspective, to welcome the retail play to be better, more confident in the space? Like, would that not be to the long-term benefit of the overall sport?
I agree with you when you describe the perception, but the perception is not accurate. And one of my biggest frustrations in running Elite Turf Club, but also being a key member of the first racing team and wanting to see Santa Anita successful and Gulfstream successful and other racetracks be successful in the long term, one of my key frustrations is that when the topic of CAW comes up, the public's instinct and many racing executives' instinct is to blame CAW without diving into the actual facts. We are a numbers-based game. Any of you, if you were entertaining somebody who came to the racetrack for the very first time and they were trying to decide what to bet and they said, I'm going to bet the gray horse, you would tell them, okay, but that's not how we work. We're a data-driven business. Look at the past performance. Read the racing form. Let's make an educated, data-based decision on what horse to bet on. So take that experience and apply it to CAW. Let's look at the actual facts. It's great to blame CAW for the late odds drops, but you got to realize that we studied at Santa Anita a year's worth of data. In the last 60 seconds before the race started, 70% of the wagers placed in the win pool were retail wagers. They weren't CAW wagers. 30% was CAW, 70% was retail. So to blame the entire odds drop or odds volatility
What about in the last
CAW
4 seconds?
In the last 4 seconds, look, everybody is betting later. I don't have that. The short answer is I don't know. We can look at that. But if the odds drop in the last 4 seconds, we're getting data from, or wagering information from TwinSpires, from TVG, they're on a different tote company, from ExpressBet, which is on the same tote company. With the advent of ADW and technology has grown, it's great that people can wait till the last second, even on a retail ADW platform, to wager, but that's driving all the money later and later and later in the process. And as Marshall said, the pari-mutuel system was designed for people at the racetrack walking up to a window and betting a couple minutes before the race. That's not the world we live in anymore. Even people at the racetrack are sitting there with their phone, pushing in their bets at the last second, or potentially uploading an Excel spreadsheet with 20 or 30 or 50 bets at the last second.
All right, let's pivot to what is coming down the line here. Okay, innovation in this space. Eric, we talked about, you have some lower takeout pick fives, okay? Has the innovation in that space really gone in the right direction? Should we not start considering increasing minimums to focus players on bets they're more likely to win than bets that are really, really difficult to win, like pick fives? Should we not want churn in a pari-mutuel business?
In the pari-mutuel sense, I think you do, Pat. I think you also have to deal with the reality of what your customers want, too. And, you know, Andrew Offren, my pal, we were at Canterbury. We tried a failed experiment with low takeout across the board 10 years ago. But I wouldn't really call it a failure because we learned a lot. And one of the things that I've taken on from there is understanding like this subset of customers who aren't interested in those low churn bets, and they want the pick fours and they want the fives. We've got the, you know, I don't think there's any track in the country who has lower takeouts overall between their fives and their fours, our turf pick three. But if you're gonna talk about takeout and you want to have some sort of long reduction of it, there's no way for this to work unless everybody does it. And the way the math absolutely works, you'd have to get the majority of the handle in the country to buy into this. Like in Shelbyville, I will not be the one waving the flag or carrying the flag and going into battle, because it doesn't work unless you get the vast majority of people to buy into it.
Why?
Because the math doesn't work, Marshall. If there's a subset of customers who are price insensitive, they're playing and they don't care what that price is. If they come to my racetrack and they're getting 10% on a win pool, and they're getting a premium because they hit that bet, and then they take that money before my track's up in another 30 minutes and they go spend it on a high takeout wager at some other track, it's defeating the purpose of what we're doing here. If you can get the majority of the racetracks together and get something where it's a low takeout and play in a fishbowl at a very low takeout, that's going to work. If we just have other racetracks that are going to feed into that and take some of the premium, it makes it hard for the operator to get their money back.
Marshall, and then I want to pivot to Dave.
Yeah, I guess there are two things. There is the extent that the ADWs might not let you drop your takeout rate, especially being a smaller track, without the consequence of a lower host fee. So I acknowledge that, but I don't know that I believe the second argument. If you put two slot machines next to each other and one has a lower takeout and the other has a higher takeout, people are going to gravitate towards the lower one because they're going to win at it more. So they're going to play your signal more as they're able to win more. You're right. You're going to lose some and there'll be some leakage, but ultimately people are going to be like, I'm getting a higher marginal return in Indiana and I'm more likely to play. Maybe I'll study those horses and jockeys more. So I'm not sure I believe that argument anymore, especially the way people play nowadays versus what they did at OTBs. But it's be interesting to research.
Dave, you're a track operator. You've already taken a step to control the CAWs. It's a bit of a game of whack-a-mole, though. You control them in the win pool, but the exactas and the tries no longer now look like the sort of returns you would get based on the win odds. It's cascading issues, okay? What are you prepared to do as one of the most substantial track operators in this country to better control the CAW experience and how retail customers are affected by it?
So at 1 minute to post, and beginning in January, we will restrict the CAW play. And that's the 2,000, 1,000, the large batch betting down to the retail threshold. And
so you're saying CAWs will not be permitted to be to not have CAW throughput?
Once the clock hits 1 minute to post. And that's...
Which we all know does not mean 1 minute, but yeah.
Leave aside the
Gulfstream, I am looking at you.
There'll be no changes to the win pool or the late pick 5 or the pick 6. We'll leave that alone. Current policy. All other pools at 1 minute to post, throttled down, same playing field in terms of throughput.
Okay, but if a CAW wants to bet, a handful of $1,000 exactas that's going to drive a combo from paying $60 to $32, and they want to do 5 of those. They do 5, and then 5, and then 5, and then 5, and then 5. That's all in one tote cycle.
That's correct.
What do you have a plan to limit that in some way? Because in a 30-second tote cycle environment, that experience is still going to be negative.
A couple of things to unpack there. One is we got to get the cycle times up. like flat out. We have to get these cycle times up and reduce them. That way we can work on this volatility curve. I spoke with Curtis from TRPV, and I've asked him to create an odds volatility metric so we can start to measure it. So what I'm saying here is we draw a line, and now we start measuring what's going on within that period of time. And then we start looking at other things. To your point right there, cycle times will help to see that, but we likely are going to need something base maximums in terms, because you're really talking about velocity.
You mean an upper level limit on how much they can bet per bet?
Yeah, I think that's where we would go next. We just want to get data here. This is something that needs to be measured, and this is a multi-phased process, because we're just going to start putting in guardrails. But to your point, yeah, there's, you're really talking about volume and throughput here. That's what I'm talking about we're
Okay,
doing.
so you're talking, this is a new policy announcement you're just making.
Correct.
Okay. Is anyone else going to replicate it?
We're going to find out. So we're talking about volume and throughput.
Well, look, pressure's on the audience here.
But to the
He's
next
telling
point,
you that he's doing it. And you're doing it because why?
because this is what the customer wants. This is about our product quality. Now, like compute, as we came out of COVID, it's true. A lot of the retail plays coming in. It's not all CAW. Everyone's playing on their phones. This volatility has gotten a little out of hand. So let's put some guardrails in. We'll measure the volume throughput. And to your next point, yeah, then it becomes, do you start looking at the density? Is there maximum bet amounts? You'd have to do it universally, but if you put in a maximum bet amount for an exacta, it's not going to really matter when you go to the window. Yeah. So that's really, let's just start measuring in this, and let's get that metric. Let's have Curtis come up with it. I'll make up a number. It's 30% movement in all odds, not just who wins. All right, let's get it down to 20. Let's get it down to 10. There's going to be a limit here, yeah. But let's just start working on it, and that will improve the experience. It'll prove everyone's going to understand what we're trying to do. I don't want to mess around with what we've done in terms of the win pool, but you're extrapolating win pool prices now to exactas, and it's sort of meaningless in a sense. So how can we start to converge this? And that's...
So let me pause you for a second. Scott, put on your LA Turf Club Santa Anita hat. Is that, I know we're not negotiating in public here, but is that reasonable? Is that something that California can accept?
Well, it's something we would consider and look at, but your reaction is, I think, a reaction that many people are going to have, and it concerns me a little bit, and let me explain what I'm saying. Dave announced a policy where CAW play, the CAW activity, would cease at 1 minute to post, meaning no player, whether it's coming through Elite or any other platform, would be allowed to place more than 6 bets per second. That puts every player, retail ADW, everybody on the same playing field as Elite. And your first reaction is, but wait a minute, can't the Elite players still make their large winning bets at less than 6 bets a second? And the answer is yes, they can. Does that mean this policy is a failure? I don't believe so, but if you believe that that means this policy is a failure, then you have to realize what you really want isn't a level playing field. You just want winning players out of the pool. And I have a very, very big philosophical problem with that approach. Now, I'm not saying that's what you believe, and I'm not saying that's what other people believe, but you have to be careful what road you start going down if you say we don't want the odds to change because people make winning bets. That's a problem.
All the growth in the wagering space across America is in fixed pricing, whether it's sports betting, knowing what price you're going to get. And it's actually the opposite in sports betting, where the pros go first. They get the best part of the price, and they discover the price for the books and the general public. And then the public comes in and happily takes the adjusted prices. So getting the CAWs to go early in certain pools is probably okay. And my alarm is going off because we're going to move to questions. Andy, get in line, please. What do you think legitimately, is there a path forward where the CAWs, I mean, look, the smartest guys in the room aren't going to get dumb overnight, okay? Put on your big boy pants. You guys do all this modeling. you should be able to figure out like how to make adjustments with a slightly different path into the pools, no?
Well, first of all, they are competitors among themselves, so there's
sure.
not one cohesive group, just like there's not one cohesive group of racetracks that can all make the same decision. The other thing is you have to realize everybody thinks of them as super powerful and they win every bet. That is not the case. Again, in the year of data we studied at Santa Anita, we randomly pulled 31 races to see how the CAW players did. And out of those 31 races, they cashed 0 of their tickets, 0% in 11 out of 31 races, meaning they're wrong a lot. Now, over time, are they right a little bit more than they're wrong? Yes. But they don't have superpowers and they're not able to solve every problem. And this is really an industry problem, I think, not a problem for the players to solve. But one step, and it sounds like NYRA's going to do it, one step of if the goal is a level playing field where everybody's treated the same, I think that certainly goes a long way towards achieving that goal.
All right, I appreciate it. And to follow on here, just to make it clear, if there are track operators in the room that are interested in what Dave has talked about, please engage and let's play this out a little bit more because I think it could be compelling. And look, this is a mixing board that's in front of you guys, okay? There is no one sound that's better than another, but improvement and continuous adjustment here I think is probably going to be really useful. Okay, Andy, I know you have a question, and I hope the openness that we've heard here so far will continue.
Right.
Thank you.
And by the way, pari-mutuel wagering was intended to be equal competition amongst players betting into the pool. We no longer have that because of the advantages given to some players and not others. If you want to grow the game, 0 rebates for anybody, you lower takeout for retail players across the board, and you begin to grow the game. All this stuff, it's so complicated. Common sense would say, why are we doing this? Yet the industry continues to do it, and we keep having more problems. But anyway, my question is for Mr. O'Rourke and then Mr. DeRudy. Due mainly to elite turf clubs and racetracks preferential treatment of their CAW players, retail horse players believe that the game is rigged against them. Can you convince them that the game is not rigged against them? Thank you.
Dave?
I think for one, and we didn't touch this on the panel, is that I'm talking about the data feed. I believe First and NYRA will make our data feeds available, same raw data feed to everyone. Put it on a web.
So a raw odds data feed.
Correct. So that somebody could either create their own graphics, they could create their own, they could ingest it into their own model. It's the same data feed that the ADWs are getting, the same one that Scott's elite players are getting. Let's just put it out there in the public. The second point, and in terms of past posting, I've heard, something came in after that type of an advantage. The TRPB's got all of this data, so we should just, how do you want that verified from a player point of view to feel confident in the product? So in that sense, and then by throttling down everyone to the retail level, so you could just open a NYRA Bets or Express Bet or any of the other ADW accounts and do your own version of a simplified upload, I think is that's the field.
So
I mean,
just
that's the game.
Just to drive into some more specificity here, you want to put out an odds feed that's essentially raw, that the public can get for free?
Yeah.
Okay. And that is essentially the same feed that would be available on ADW platforms, except the ADWs are channeling it into a user interface that the customer really has no choice but to accept. This will allow them to essentially, if you have the ability to code or parse, they can do whatever they want with that information?
Correct.
And when do you anticipate that being available?
Next month or so?
Scott shook his head and you said next month, so I just want to...
He's building the website, so.
All right, so Scott, you want this too?
In the near future, absolutely we want it. And by the way, we've talked with NYRA that the first racetracks and the NYRA racetracks would would make this data available. Now again, it's the same data that's already out there, and anybody who has any rudimentary coding ability can currently go on their ExpressBet TVG Twin Spires account and just scrape the data and get it into this format.
Yeah.
But that's a step that our customers currently have to take, that we asked ourselves, why are we making them take that step? So we can eliminate that step for them.
Okay, there's a lot of walls that get put up in this business between operators. Can other tracks sign on to this to have their data as well? Could Eric say, yes, make Horseshoe Indianapolis available too?
For sure. And what I would see here is, ideally, this could become a marketplace where other forms of data related to the game are offered out. I think it gives the opportunity for people to make products. Like, let's let people get creative. Let's get this out there. Let them create their own models. Like, we've got AI, machine learning. So you start pushing this data into one centralized place. It's raw. Let's face it, 99% of the consumer is not going to be interested. But that 1%, we're going to get a lot out of that, I think.
Scott, quickly.
Yeah, I know we're short on time, but I didn't get a chance to answer Mr. Asaro's question. I disagree with the premise of the question that the elite customers or the CAW customers are given preferential treatment. Just real quickly, some of the rumors I've heard about that preferential treatment, they're allowed to bet after the race has started. That's complete nonsense and not true. That they get data that is not available to the general public, we've talked about a lot today, that is not true. That they have the exclusive ability to bet more than 6 bets per second, that is not true. Any customer who wants to bet more than 6 bets per second can go to their existing platform or come to Elite and say, I want to bet more than 6 bets per second. That moves them into a category where there's a different set of rules they have to comply with, but it's available to them. And then the last point, that the Elite customers get a bigger rebate, that's something for debate and maybe another panel. In a perfect world, could we lower takeout across the board, across the entire industry, and then get rid of rebates? Yeah, in a perfect world, maybe that could happen. That's not the world we live in.
Thank you. Sir.
Yeah, Pat, just thanks so much. This has been really informational, all of you guys as well. I think building on what David said, like sort of the blended 20%, I think maybe a lot of the frustration for the betting public is really like, what is it? And how much is, I don't even want to say a CAW, I'm not going to lump in, like a whale. What is a giant bettor getting in rebate? What is his takeout compared to me? And is there something technically preventing that from being known? Even if it's not, even if it is the same, if you're getting 5% after all your rebates and I'm like a rube taking 20, what is the difference, and is there anything to ever tell it to the public what actually is happening?
Just to clarify that, when you're saying 20%, 20% I'm just saying is the whole betting menu, when you aggregate all the activity, what the takeout is. To clarify your question?
Yeah, is the CAW getting less than that after rebates? And then how much? And why do we, we know?
When you think of a CAW platform, and I'm just going to put my hat on as like a content distributor. So we would charge Elite or Naira Bets, whatever it might be, whatever the distributor is getting charged for a host fee. And typically, the CAW platforms are going to pay the highest version of that. Now, that platform, like Elite, is a wholesale type platform, so it has very low overhead. So there is like a differential there that would go back to that player. But that's no different than if somebody's wagering in a state with zero source market fee. The only thing in the middle is really what that operator, that distributor is going to take out of it. So there's players that would receive very similar net rebates, depending on where they're coming from. Is that?
I totally agree. And let me give you a specific example, because a lot of things in our industry, it's hard to come up with one answer, because are you talking about a pick 6 pool at the Parks racetrack, or are you talking about a win pool at Naira? Let me give you a specific example, because I can speak for Santa Anita.
As quickly as you can, Scott.
Yeah, Santa Anita Park has a 15.43% takeout in its win pool. Elite Turf Club and other CAW platforms pay an 11.75% host fee to Santa Anita for the right to have their customers bet into that pool. That leaves you with less than 4.5% of total available funds, of which tote fee has to be paid, other costs and expenses such as Elite's got to make a little money. You're looking at a CAW player might get a 2.5–3% rebate betting into the win pool at Santa Anita. That's one example.
Yeah, and that's great to know. I guess that's the point. I'm not really all that upset. I'm saying the general public thinks that it's full rebates, or they have no idea, and that's sort of, is there something to help these backroom deal things, right?
Just to summarize, and we saw this even yesterday in the other sessions that talked about wagering in a couple different ways. You all could use some really good PR help to explain a lot of things more regularly from official sources, because it shouldn't be coming from us, okay? It's got to come from you guys. Question?
No, I have a quick statement. I just want to take a half step back and step out of racetrack management and just think of what everybody's thinking about, rebates or commissions on a big player. He's a big customer. Why shouldn't he get a little some perk? When you go someplace, you get a perk if you're a big customer. If this gentleman thinks that he's a big enough player that he should get something, go to your track management, show him you're a big player. You may be put into a special room or given a little perk for doing that. I use perks to get here on my airline because I fly a lot. I use perks for a long flight to get into first class. Well, somebody who might have wanted to purchase that ticket couldn't because I used that perk to get there. With all the delays that I had in my flight, I'm glad I was up there and got my free drink and my free meal. But I used my perks and I took advantage of it. So if you're a big player, why shouldn't you get a little bit of something? And even if you're a retail customer, well, go ask for something. You know, there's nothing wrong with that.
But if the engine stops at 30,000 feet, it doesn't matter where you're sitting.
Exactly.
Okay? You're all in trouble.
Exactly.
Right.
But I was taking that from a different perspective. There are perks in all sorts of businesses. It's just if you're a big level player or a big customer somewhere, you're going to get something even on your American Express card. So.
And I mentioned Marshall lives in Tennessee, a zero source market fee state, correct?
Yeah, I get great rebates, and I'm sure they're pretty comparable, and I bet a good amount of money, and hopefully we fix this tax law, because I think we're going to have a giant drain on our handle that people don't realize are coming.
I wish there
Just
was a
have to put it out there.
Question?
This isn't really related to the CAW play. It went to David talking about how effectively the math doesn't always work when takeouts and host fees and all that. I ran ADWs for the better part of 23 years. The last two was after my company was sold to a sports betting company. And one of the things that I learned at the sports betting company, a lot of their deals are net gaming revenue deals. And what I found running ADWs is sometimes you have deals that are percentages of host fees or takeout, some that are based on handle, some that are flat fees. And I think maybe you would have much more flexibility in doing takeout-related reductions if everything was based on net gaming revenues. You could always negotiate what qualifies as an expense to come out of it. And that really circles back. I'm very old, started in simulcasting when you were doing separate pool on a couple of races. And in the early days, everything was a 50-50 split between the track and the bet taker.
Could I get to the question, Todd?
So it was a statement of how to fix that problem.
I appreciate it. Final question.
Post time. You say you stop 2 minutes or 1 minute to post time. That fluctuates. Horses, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. When do you actually stop? When the horses go in the gate or the published post time?
Stop in terms of CAW type activity?
Any of the stop betting. If you're
So-
saying you're stopping 2 minutes to post, the published post is 1:03. The actual horses don't go into the gate till later.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
So the two-step answer is essentially when the clock turns to 1 minute to post, we're throttling down CAW.
So essentially on the feed that's built into everybody's system, when that goes to 1, that's when it will change.
Correct.
Just like now in the wind pool, which you're not anticipating to change, it's 2.
We'll align them all to 1 minute to post. Like I'm trying to align this to get this like clean. We're not going to allow anyone that's classified as a CAW to player to bet into the win pool after 1 minute to post. Like we've got to monitor this, so that number is just going to be the line for now.
Okay.
In terms of the off, that's a redundant stop betting button that the toad operator and the stewards are hitting.
Yeah.
So that's how they
So if there's a loose horse,
that's
you're
a
not
hard cutoff on the toad.
You're not changing anything.
They're not going to change that. No, there's been
It will have stopped. If we're now at 0 minutes to post and a horse is running loose, the CAWs don't suddenly get turned back to CAW power.
That's correct.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. There's a lot more to discuss about this, and the thing I would ask the operators, please be more open to the public. I think they really want it, need it. I think it would be good for all of us. I do appreciate the time. Thank you for the questions and the participation. Have a great week.